What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Slow Restoration. It's April outside and it is actually snowing. We have the pool open, as you saw from the last video, and it's snowing. So crazy weather. It'll warm back up, but for right now we do have the heat running in the garage. That's the sound you hear. And we have a quick project in the garage we need to knock out. A 1963 Chevy Impala SS convertible. It's getting a new suspension under it, or just kind of a rebuild on the suspension. Nothing crazy, just kind of stock refresh on the factory suspension. And if you don't know these cars at all, wait until we get this thing put up. It's kind of crazy underneath. We got our parts unboxed here, and as you can see, it's pretty much the whole suspension system. We have new springs, we have new shocks, new isolators, new bushings, the whole front end ball joints, tie rod ends, all that kind of stuff. So it looks like we have everything here. Let's go ahead and put this car up in the air, and I'll show you what makes these cars unique. All right, with that up in the air, we'll go underneath. We'll actually start from the back here. Big giant fuel tank. Actually, yeah, most GM cars, fuel tanks right here. That is actually the trunk pan. Fuel tank is right here behind the axle. Either way, what I wanted to show you is the frame configuration. Normally you would see the frame out here along the rocker perimeter frame. These are not. If we go down a little bit, you can see that is an X frame, and these old Chevys were like that. And the exhaust runs kind of unique. Also, it kind of follows the frame in. Mufflers are always up front like that, and they come up over the axle, back out, follow the X of the frame, and back out. So that kind of makes these cars pretty unique and very different. So when you put the lift arms under, there's nothing to attach to out here along the rockers. You have to go all the way in till you can actually reach the frame rails. But this is a very nice, presentable, older car, probably an older restoration, or it was just kept up on, and it just needs a freshen up for the suspension components. Everything's just older. He did put shocks on, hoping that would fix his issues, but these old cars, they just the bushings, as you can see right here, I can grab a hold of that bushing. It's just mushy, and it's just, I can pull it right out with my fingers. So there's nothing left there. So we have all the parts. We're gonna rebuild it. Let's get to work here. First step is we'll get the wheels, all four wheels and tires off. These are obviously hubcaps, so we'll pop the hubcaps off, pull the wheels and tires off, and just match up. Make sure everything looks like the new parts look at least similar to the old parts. Another thing that is unique about these old, I'm not sure what years, I think up to 64 they could be. It's a trailing arm suspension, but the upper A arms, there's only one. So it's called a 3-link. It does have a panhard bar, but the lower control arms house the spring. So the spring actually doesn't go to the housing, it goes on that lower control arm. And the upper arm, there's only one link there. With all four wheels off, we're actually going to kind of tackle the back here first. Pull jack, take the shock bolt off, pull the shock off. You can see how much further that drops down once the shock's off. That'll put a lot less tension on these springs. We'll get this side undone and drop that axle down as far as we can. Just keep an eye, you don't put too much. We got plenty of play here on our brake line, but definitely keep an eye on that. And we're just going to disassemble some of the back here and see how far we can get here. We got both of our shocks undone here, and we also got our panhard bar unhooked, and you can hear the creaking and groaning in those old bushings. These old cars with the weird squeaks, that's what they are. There's actually very little tension on these coil springs once you get the shocks and allow that housing to come down. So we got our rear springs popped out. We have it compared to our new one there, and you can see the new one is a little bit longer. These are probably just, wore out. This car is old. It's a 1963. We went ahead and put the new panhard bar on this upper mount. I don't know if I said we took that off or not, but we did take that off, and that noise is gone. We did go ahead and get this top. This is the third link. This is the upper control arm, and we are reusing that. The panhard bar gets replaced completely, as you can see there. The top link, we're just going to replace those bushings, and you get a good look there and see how worn those bushings are. So we do have new bushings for that, and they will have to be pressed out and pressed back in. All right, we also got our shocks swapped out. As you can see, we have them bolted on at the top. We do not have the bottoms connected yet. That's because we still want that to drop down so we can get those coil springs in. We still have to pull the lower control arms off, and they do have kind of a funny link here. If we go over here, here's the new pieces. They do give you these new. So this is the bolt that goes through the lower control arm, and the bottom shock. That is also the bottom shock mount. So we have to do that. In the meantime, we have this upper arm off. Like I said, we have new bushings to go in it. We have to press these old ones out. And my preferred method is using a ball joint press. It usually works pretty good. So let me get this set up and I'll show you how it works. All right, so you're going to want to select if you're not familiar with a ball joint press tool, there's different sizes of rings and cups and stuff that you can push and pull on things. We're going to get a ring that fits over this bushing. Here's the new bushing, and so as you can see, it fits inside. Now we did have a slight issue. This has a bend on it for strength, and the bushing was so tight that we couldn't fit that in there without hitting the bushing. So I just took a cutoff wheel and shaved some of that lip off that bushing. Now this actually fits in there and goes flat against the arm, so we're good to go with that. We'll put this on there, and this fits into the end of that. This, obviously, as you crank on it, is going to push. So let's go ahead and try and push that bushing. We kind of have that set up there, and let's go ahead and put some pressure on it and see what happens here. So that didn't work on that particular one. It pushed the center out of the bushing. So we're gonna have to try a little bit different strategy here. We'll get something that fits on the shell of the bushing a little bit more and push on that. So we did get that to break loose. So we used a socket on this side to push against to grab more of that bushing. You can see that. And we're putting a socket in the center here to keep this arm. This is just real thick sheet metal, really, folded over. So if you're not careful, and that's why I don't normally use a regular hydraulic press to do these, because you can really fold these things up if you're not careful. So we'll put a socket in there to keep this from collapsing on itself, and that bushing should push right out. It already started moving, so I know it's going to go. So let's just go ahead and drive that out. Yep, it's out now. Pull that apart, get all of our junk out of here, and that bushing should, yep, come right out. We got these bushings pressed back in. It's kind of the same deal here. We use spacers to put in there to keep that from collapsing. You may need 2 or 3, depending on how you're doing it. And kind of overall, it's the reverse procedure of pressing it out. So you're going to press it in with the different spacers, and on this end you just have to have one that's open, allows that bushing to go through without hitting. So obviously I didn't show how to press these back in. I did show how to press them out. We have a lot more bushings to go, don't worry. We'll show you how to press them in. And again, they're all slightly different also. So it is what it is. You just got to make work with what you have. And like I said, I like using this ball joint press. It's very versatile and it works well. Moving right along here, we're tackling the lower control arms, not A arms, the lower control arms. And I see why they gave you these new lower shock bolts, because they're pretty much impossible to get out without destroying. So this side we actually did get the nut to break loose, but the threads just totally galled up on their way out. This side we took a Sawzall and cut, and then just, as you can see, we just snapped it off. Our arm should be pretty well loose. We have the upper mount. We'll get a pry bar, get that lower control arm out, get the bushings pushed out, and get the new ones pushed in. We were able to get one of these lower control arms all finished up, bushings out, new bushings in. Again, I'll show you as we go further along some more of how to chuck these up in this ball joint press, but it does work well. It's just which adapters do you have to use to push and pull and such. We'll go ahead and get this put back up on there, and we can get one spring installed. And it is worth mentioning also, these lower shock bolts are also the lower bolt for the control arm here. They do have a flat on them. If you can see that, get this nut off here. Drop that off so you can see it a little bit better there. There's a flat on there, and that does correspond with, there's a flat on this housing bracket. So once you put that in there, it will go in there and index that around, and that will keep that from spinning as your shock puts forces on there. We have the other side lower control arm out, one of the bushings pushed out, and we're pushing the new one in. And as I told you, I'd show you how I chuck these up to push the new bushing in. We have a spacer that's hollow on this side for it to come through. This is the side that's actually pushing on the bushing, and then we have these spacers in here just to keep that from collapsing. And as you can see, pushes that bushing nice, smooth in, fully bottomed out there. We'll hit it a little bit more, take it apart, knock our bushings out, and we'll be ready to move to that side. With that bushing in there, we got the whole back end put back together. So lower control arms, the back bushing, and this pin, new shocks, new springs, new front lower bushing on both sides, new panhard bar, new upper, the third link, the upper control arm, new bushings on either side of that, and everything back together and tightened up. Now we're ready to move to the front. The front's got a few more moving parts up here, but it's kind of the same deal. You do have the steering components to deal with, and the ball joints, but we did already take the shocks off. But this will take a little while to do, just because there is more components, like I said. So we'll probably make that another video. The back's complete. We're on to the front. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good day.